Did you know there are 6 secret rules of persuasion that all of us psychologically respond to in one way or another that help us determine whether we're going to buy something or sign up for something or take an action? Did you know that you use some of these 6 rules every day and weren't even aware of it? These are the most powerful ways to get people to sign up for your project, your service, your business, and in your personal life, persuading people to take actions that you need them to take to accomplish your goals. Today, we're going to talk about those, we're going to run through them, and we're going to see how to apply them so that you can utilize them for your project, your business, and in your personal life in an ethical and honest manner. I hope you'll join me for this edition of Master Marketing as we cover the 6 rules of persuasion. I've been teaching these rules for years in my presentation skills courses at FIU University's MBA program. I use them with CIOs that we advise and guide and train. Essentially, these are the rules that all of us as human beings use to make decisions about whether to use something or do something or buy something. They are the key triggers, the key ways that we are persuaded to do things. So if you like what you see today, please follow us on Twitter at Team Blacknox or subscribe if you're watching the video version down below. I'm looking forward to providing you with this information, and I'd love to have your comments and thoughts about what you learned today. And if you have other ideas and ways to help people get persuaded to take an action, because it's at the core of everything we do in business, in tech projects, to really get people to use what we're creating. And so it's really important to understand what motivates human beings and how we can help them grow. Most of what I'm going to cover today comes from 2 places: my own personal experience and the experience of people that I work with and advise and that we advise here at Blacknox, and this book. This book is called Influence, Science, and Practice by Robert Cialdini, and I recommend everyone that I guide and advise and teach to get a copy of this book and read it, because it beautifully encapsulates everything that we're going to talk about today, but with exact examples in business and in life of how these 6 rules of persuasion are used to persuade us. The book was originally written to help people counter the influence of persuasion and these tactics. But what it really does is teaches you how to understand what motivates people to make a decision to purchase or use something. So we're going to briefly go through and cover all of the different rules. We're going to talk about how they apply, and most of what I cover today will be enough to get you started. The origins of this book are that Robert Cialdini is a professor, and he was really interested in how people are influenced and how they make decisions to buy. So he and his students actually went out and studied and culled all the data and numbers around persuasion and influence tactics. And once they had all the numbers together, they actually went out into the world and worked in the jobs as car salespeople, as marketers, as telemarketers, as other kinds of door-to-door salespeople to understand how these tactics work. And that's what's in this book, and that's what we're going to talk about today. It just isn't limited to sales. It's also useful in marketing, it's useful in negotiations, and a lot more. The first thing we got to cover, though, is this. And when I give my presentation skills course and talk about the rules of influence and persuasion, I often start by asking people what their job title is. And they'll tell me they're in accounting, or they're in administration, or they're a doctor or a nurse, or they're a marketing manager or whatever. And my response to them is, no, you're a salesperson first. And most people become offended when you call them a salesperson, because we over time have treated the act of sales, the act of persuasion to get money from somebody for something, as a dirty job. And cars salesmen like this are one of the reasons that image has come about. But if you stop and think about it, you're selling every single day of your life. You never stop selling in everything you do. From persuading your children to clean up their room, to convincing your wife that a specific vacation is a great idea or a bad idea, to convincing your boss to give you a raise, to convincing your partners to take a specific strategy, to determining what features are going to be in your products and getting everybody on board around it, we are always selling. We are always persuading. The skills that I'm going to talk to you about today are useful not only in selling your product or service, getting people excited about your project, they're useful in every aspect of your life. And it's really critical that you understand how they work. Now, the other side of that is that these skills, this knowledge can be used for evil. It is well documented in Cialdini's book and in our lives that people often use persuasion tactics to con us into bad purchases. It happens all the time. But that just reinforces the power of the 6 rules of persuasion. They are absolutely the most powerful ways to get us to decide to do something. And at the end of the day, that's what a salesperson's job is. That's what a marketing person's job is. That's what a manager's or a parent's job is. And that is to get someone to take an action. You are probably already utilizing many of these rules yourself and you don't even realize it. And you are subjecting yourself to them on a daily basis. We're going to talk about each rule. We're going to talk about what it means. And we're going to talk about how they are applied in our everyday lives so you can see examples of them. And then I would love to hear from you about what things you're trying to convince people to do in your projects, in your life, and in your business, and what you think might be the best applications of these 6 rules of persuasion to it. At the end of the day, you have to decide that you're going to utilize the rules of persuasion for good, that you're going to utilize the rules of persuasion to get people to buy or use something that you think provides value. If what you are doing in your business or your project is not providing value, then you're just a con man or woman. At the end of the day, it's critical that what you're offering and what you're persuading people of is ethical. And there are ways to utilize the powers of persuasion in an ethical manner. Because ultimately, if you believe in what you're offering people and you can provide value to them, then the rules of persuasion are just things that we have to use to convince people of the value of what we provide. So how you use it now is up to you. And I'm just going to provide the books for you, the rules for you. So rule number 1, liking. People are easily persuaded by people that they like or in whom they have faith. So let's think about that a little bit. Usually we think about liking as people that we're old friends with, people that we know well, people that we've hung around with a lot, people that we've been friends with for years. And certainly those kinds of folks are people that will more easily be persuaded by us because they know us, they trust us, they have faith in us. But liking doesn't have to be something that comes from years of knowing somebody. Liking can happen in a second. How many times have you been in a conversation with a stranger when you said to yourself, wow, this is somebody that I'd really enjoy hanging out with. This is somebody I really like. This is someone who I could trust. That's the kind of liking that can make a difference in marketing and in sales and in one-on-one presentations. If you're trying to raise money is another great example of how to use the 6 rules of persuasion. How do you make it so that people like you from the very beginning? One of the number 1 ways to make people like you is to ask them about themselves and to listen. When you listen to someone talk about themselves, when you encourage them to talk about themselves, you are much more likely to make them like you. Because there is nothing we as human beings like more than to be able to talk about ourselves. We love talking about ourselves. We love being able to tell people what we're doing and why. We love feeding our ego. We love hearing praise from people. If you can genuinely listen to people, if you can genuinely provide them feedback, if you can genuinely help them through a problem, people are going to like you. And there are a lot of ways to do that. One of the ways to do it is, and we're going to talk about this more in a little bit, but one of the ways to do that is by providing them information, providing them an education, by providing them with skills or tools to help them around a problem. And there are any number of ways that a technology project or any other product can provide information and knowledge that will help people in a situation that they're in. So you can get people to like you by getting them to listen, by listening to them, by asking about themselves, by letting them talk about themselves. And that's great in a one-on-one situation. That's great if you're involved in some kind of customer chat. But another way to do that is by helping people through a problem. And that can be done by educating them. That can be done by providing tools. That can be done by providing services. But it's really critical that if you're doing this through a web page or an application, that you provide some personality around it that those people can like. I see way too many websites, way too many projects that are technology oriented that are so incredibly dry. And one of the ways to make sure that people will like you, your project, and your products is to give them a personality. Give them some interaction that makes them feel like there are human beings behind the product, and that those human beings have a sense of humor, or take you seriously, or are here to solve your problems, or want to support you in whatever you're trying to do. That is half the battle to getting people to like you. Humor is a great way to get people to like you. Solving problems, educating, all of those are great ways to get people to like you. So stop now and think for yourself, how can I get people to like me, like my platform, like my product, like my team better? How do we make sure that people feel safe and comfortable and trust us because we are a trusted provider to them? How do we make it so that people feel like we are someone and something that they like? It's a really key part of persuasion. Laying the groundwork for liking before you're asking people to take an action like buying something, subscribing to something, downloading and using something is really critical. So you have to establish this early in the buying cycle. You have to really make people feel like you're somebody or someone or company to be liked very early in the process so that they can get a sense that you are someone they can trust. And that's a really critical part of using the liking part of the 6 rules of persuasion. I look forward to hearing more about ways you think you can help people like you and you like your company. But really stop and think about what you're presenting in your communications, what you're presenting in your Twitter profile, what you're presenting on your website, what the sign-up process is like. Are you providing a reason for people to like you? Are you giving them things that make them like you? Are you providing content, education, videos, whatever, that will make them feel like you're there to help them and be on their side? Authority. People tend to obey authority figures, real or fake, even if they are asked to perform objectionable acts. We all understand why authority can make people do things. And obviously, authority can be used in a really negative fashion. There was a study a long time ago called the Milgram experiment. And the idea behind the Milgram experiment was to try to understand why people in Nazi Germany didn't stand up against the Nazis, why they allowed people to be murdered, why they allowed people to be imprisoned. And the study was done with 2 people that would be in a waiting room to participate in the study. One of the participants was actually part of the study team, pretended to be someone that would be answering questions in the back room. And the other person was going to be asking the questions and was the person that was actually part of this being studied. That person would be brought in by a doctor in a lab coat, sat down in front of a big box and a machine, and told that the dials on the machine would set the level of electrocution that the person in the back room would get if they answered a question incorrectly. They were then told to ask the respondent in the back room a series of questions. And as the questions were asked, the respondent would always get the answers wrong, and they were then instructed to turn the dial up on the electrocution to study whether or not they would learn better and do better if they were electrocuted with higher and higher levels of electricity that could eventually kill them. And they were told that eventually it could kill them. Obviously, the person in the back room wasn't being electrocuted at all. They were just pretending. They would answer the question wrong, and then they would suffer this electronic shock, and then they would scream in pain. Well, the sad thing was that a large number of people continued all the way through past where the electrocution would be fatal in this study. And the reason a lot of people gave was that they were assured by the doctors in the lab coats that it would be okay, that it was what they were supposed to do. We all understand the power of authority, but authority doesn't have to be used in such a negative way. Authority can be your credentials. It can be what you learn and understand. It could be someone who has incredible experience and skills with encryption or in blockchain technologies or in some other technology, but making sure people understand that you have that authority and skills is really crucial. Don't bury the credentials of your most important people on the about page of your website. Make people see that you are experienced, that you know what you're doing, that you have their safety in mind, that you have their benefit in mind, that what you're going to provide them can be backed up because the people who are running this organization and running this project or running this business actually know what they're doing. Establishing authority is a really critical thing. And then utilizing that authority to persuade people is very easy. It's just a matter of reminding people that as they are ready to make a decision about whether or not to use your product, that the people behind the product are actually authorities in it. So I wouldn't recommend using the authority in the way of the Milgram study, but I would recommend using authority to establish your credentials, to establish that you are important and that you understand your market and you understand the technology and you understand what you're doing. That kind of authority will actually help persuade people. And you don't have to ask them to do objectionable acts as long as the product you're providing them is not objectionable. Scarcity. I've been in marketing for 25 years, and I understand how scarcity works more than probably as much as anyone else that's in the marketing field. Things are more attractive when their availability is limited or when we stand to lose the opportunity to acquire them on favorable terms. And despite the fact that I understand exactly how scarcity works, I understand that something not being available makes the human mind want to have it, I still fall prey to it on a regular basis. Only 3 more copies left at this price. Only 3 more rooms at this rate in this hotel on Expedia. Everywhere you look on the web, anytime you're buying something, you will see the emphasis on scarcity. Amazon does it, Expedia does it. Every website in the world that sells things to people tries to make you feel like the product might run out. And that's because we as human beings are much more inclined to want something and to make a decision to buy now rather than put it off if we feel like there is a limited number of them available. Now, it seems like really obvious. We all know what's happening there. We understand that we're being manipulated. And yet, even me, someone who has used scarcity on a regular basis in marketing, still I respond to it. And this is a really, really deep human trait. So making sure that people understand the scarcity of what you have is really important. If you're limiting the number of users in a beta test, make sure they know you're limiting the number of users in a beta test. If a deal that you are offering is time limited, make sure people know it's time limited, that there are only 15 days left, or this price will only be available for 2 days. If there's a way to build scarcity into what you're offering to people and it's legitimate and you're not lying to them, then use it. Utilize scarcity because it is a strong human emotion. Again, it's critical that if you're going to use it ethically. Don't lie to people about what the scarcity is of your product. But if you're limiting something in some way, time, price, number of units, inventory, whatever it is, don't lose the opportunity to use scarcity to help persuade them to take an action sooner than later. The truth is that when people don't take the action to buy, getting them back to buy is much more difficult than if you had just gotten them to buy in the first place. So scarcity is a really powerful persuasion tactic, and it's really important that you utilize it ethically and honestly, but if you've got it, use it. Reciprocity. We generally aim to return favors, pay back debts, give in exchange, and treat others as they treat us. Have you ever been to Costco or BJ's or any of the big stores that provide free samples as you're eating? There's a reason they do it. They're not doing it to get you to taste it and see if you like it or not. Which obviously is part of it. What they're really doing is giving you something. They're giving you a taste of something for free, which you love to do. My kids run up and down the aisles trying all the samples because they love it. Because a certain number of human beings are going to go ahead and buy that product based on the concept of reciprocity. Because innate in us is a desire to return a favor once something has been given to us. And often we have no problem returning the favor in measures far greater than the favor we originally received. As a matter of fact, we innately want to make what we do back more than, because we feel an obligation and a need to pay back. It's a great tactic in sales. Salespeople will offer something for free or for discount in order to get a commitment from you that you would buy if you got it. And we're going to talk a little bit more about commitment here in the future. But reciprocity, giving something to someone, making feel like they got something, creates an obligation in our minds. It makes us want to give back. So what are the ways you can give to people who are coming to look at your products? Can you give them a smaller product or tool that they could utilize that you don't ever charge for and it's free to use? So number one, they keep coming back to your site or your software to use it over and over again because it's expressly useful for them. And then every time they see your site or your app, because they're utilizing that tool you gave them for free or for cheap, they feel more and more obligation to reciprocate what you gave to them. If you can provide something of value to a user, and if you can give them that to use over and over again, not only do you reinforce your brand, but you create this sense of need to reciprocate. It doesn't happen with every user, but it is an incredibly powerful way to get people to buy from you because they feel an obligation. The good news is, if you're giving things to someone, you're actually creating, brand loyalty. You're actually doing something good for people, doing something good for your community of potential users, doing something good for your local community if that's who your target is. There are a million ways that you can give to people: a free course, a free training, a free utility, as I discussed. There are a million ways that you can think of to give something to people so that they will want to give back to you or pay back you by buying something from you. And it's an excellent way to not only build up an email list, but also to build brand loyalty and to spread the word. Because people that feel obligated to you will also, in return to pay you back, tell other people about what you offer, right? If they hear about a friend that needs something that you're selling to them, they're much more likely to tell others about you in order to get past that feeling of needing to reciprocate what you already gave to them. So think about ways that you can give to your community. You can give them data, you can give them tools, you can give them education, you can give them, like I said, a ton of other things that there could potentially be of value to your end customer. Think about who that person is if you haven't. Understand who they are. Understand some other problem they have in their life, in their career, because of who you're targeting, that you can solve for them fairly inexpensively, but that can provide you incredible returns over the long term. Reciprocity is incredibly powerful. Consistency. If people commit orally or in writing to an idea or goal, they are more likely to honor such to remain congruent with their self-image. We have a real need. Again, this isn't everyone. It's a percentage of the population, but it is a powerful motivator. We have a real need to be consistent. If we make a commitment to you that we're going to buy what you offer or use your tool or use your currency or whatever it may be, then we are much more likely to commit to do that if we have committed to it. This is why it's so important in a sales process to get commitments throughout the sales process from someone you're trying to sell to. Now, you can do this on the web, but if you're in a one-on-one sales position because you sell an enterprise product, getting people to say the word yes or to commit in some way or to write something down and sign something before you get them to the thing you want them to buy is an excellent way to build in and leverage the consistency need of most human beings. So, think about the last time you went in to buy a car. Think through the sales process you went through. The salesperson, if they were good, was getting you to commit early on. They were asking you things like, would you like to have this for free with it? If I can get this price, will you buy from us today? If I can do XYZ, will you do this? This is how you end up starting at a car price of $25,000 and walk out the door at $35,000. Because once you've committed to doing it, to buying, and he can get that price, he can now start layering on more things. Things you want, things you know you're going to need, things he failed to tell you. Now, again, this isn't the most ethical way to use consistency, but I tell you about this process that car salespeople go through so that you can understand how it applies to what you're doing. Would it be valuable to you if you knew you could save $25,000 on your infrastructure costs? Would it be valuable to you to understand blah, 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 blah? It doesn't matter what it is. The key is getting people to agree to things, getting them early on in the process to say, yes, this makes sense to me. Yes, I want to do this. And I do not see consistency being used enough on the web to get people to commit to something early enough in the sales process, in the marketing process, getting them committed to concepts, getting them committed to the value of a tool, getting them committed to a concept behind a project, getting them committed to a cause or a mission. Those are all things that we should be doing. We should be figuring out ways to get people committed and involved and invested in what we're doing. After you have an initial commitment, you can be part of what normally happens in a lot of marketing scenarios, and that is upselling. So you may start with a product or a project that is lower in price or less commitment by the person you're trying to get a commitment from, and then engage them later on into more. That's what in-app purchases are, right? We start somebody off with something free, and then they buy something once they're utilizing it and see the value and want to unlock more. Or we get them to spend $7 on something initially, a tool that they want to use, and now they've already in the process of saying yes, so that when you offer them something more for a little bit more, they will buy. Now, it's up to you how you build in consistency and getting people to commit early. But once you get people to commit, they are much more likely to stick with that commitment to the end, especially if you combine other forms of persuasion. The final rule number 6 of the persuasion is social proof. When uncertain or making a decision, people will do things that they see others doing. Several years ago, I had a friend that was starting a restaurant despite me trying to persuade him not to enter into one of the toughest businesses in the world. And I told him to do something that I do for clients at trade shows. What I told him to do was to pay people for a week or two to come eat every night at his restaurant and have a third to half of his parking lot full of cars, so that when people saw the new restaurant in town, they were much more likely to go in because there were other people eating there. Now, I didn't tell him that because I wanted him to be unethical. I told him that because I knew he was going to have great food and that other people would experience it and be willing to experience it if they saw a lot of other people already dining there. If you're at a trade show and you have a booth set up, get people from your team to not be dressed as your team, standing in front of your booth in the aisle, listening to the pitch of the people in your booth. Why? Because the more people see people gathered around your booth, the more curious they're going to be about what they're missing out on. We are social animals. We want to do the things that other people do. We want to be part of the popular thing. We do this all the time, and it is one of the most powerful methods of persuasion. So I've given you a couple examples of how you could do that in terms of starting a restaurant or if you're going to be at a trade show, but how else can you do that? Well, there are great new tools that allow you to show people on your website, people that have just downloaded your app, people that have just made a purchase, people that have whatever. It'll automatically load the location, who bought, etc., and it's integrated with the shopping cart on your website, or you can integrate it yourself via API. Feel free to reply and comment to me, and I'll be happy to send you links to the tools that do that. But that is a form of social proof. It shows people visiting your website that other people are interested enough in what you're doing to download, to buy, to ask for more information, whatever it is. That's a great method of social proof. Another method of social proof is testimonials. When we give people's testimonials on our website, and they are real testimonials of real people that have used your product, that makes people feel safe about doing it, especially if they are people that they would respect because they hold a certain role or are in the industry that you're targeting, whatever might be the reason. Putting up big brands in your website or in your pitches of big companies that have used your products or services is also another great way to get social proof. Encouraging your users to share your content, to share your website, to share your app is an excellent way to get social proof. Because when people see their friends using something or other people in the industry that they respect using something, they're much more likely to use the product themselves. So make sure that you're gathering all of these different methods, combining them together for an ethical persuasion bundle to help people make a decision to buy the thing that you know is so great that you've created that you want them to buy. Finally, there's something I want you to not lose track of that's really critical to all of your marketing. And it's not a specific rule of persuasion, but it is a rule of all marketing. And it's something that we all lose sight of. And I like to reiterate it over and over again when I'm teaching CEOs, when I'm teaching MBA students. It doesn't matter. What I reiterate with my clients all the time is anything you are selling, anything you are offering, anything you are doing isn't about you. It's about me. What are my needs? What's the benefit to me? What will I get out of this? I am not somebody that buys on features. We are somebody that buys on benefits. And it's critical that you make sure that every bit of communication you do to me to get me persuaded to buy or use what you're offering is about me. Orient all your communications to what I get out of it. Orient all your communications to what's in it for me and how I will benefit. Will it increase my stature? Will I make more money? Will I save more money? Will my life be easier? Will I save more time? Will I have more time at home? Will I get a bigger salary? Whatever it is that you can tell people will be the benefit of your service or product, you have to make sure and reiterate it. The only time it's not about me, the customer, is when you're establishing authority and showing that you have the skills and experience and expertise to provide them what you're asking me to buy. The rest of the time, all of your communication has to be about me. It has to be about who I am, what I need, and how I can benefit. Let's summarize what we've learned today. The 6 rules of persuasion. Reciprocity. People are much more likely to buy, purchase, or take an action because they've already been given something and they feel an obligation. Consistency. People are much more likely to commit and do something if you've already gained some level of commitment from them in advance. Some investment of their time, some investment of energy, or just saying yes to other things. Social proof. We are much more likely to jump on board what other people are doing. We're much more likely to short circuit the whole due diligence process because we've seen a bunch of other people that we like and trust or know who are willing to do it, or other people that are just doing it. Liking. If I like you, I'm much more likely to buy from you. If I like you, I'm much more likely to trust you. How can you establish a like relationship with the people who you want to take an action to buy your product, to use your tools, whatever it is? Authority. Authority figures are much more likely to convince people to do something. You can establish authority with education, with credentials, whatever it may be, but you can utilize authority to make people feel more comfortable about buying from you and to be willing to take some level of direction from you on what you need. Scarcity. If something is in short supply, we as human beings are much more likely to buy it because there is not enough of it and we're afraid we'll miss out on something. Scarcity is a really powerful part of the 6 rules of persuasion. Now here's the key. Are you using these in conjunction with each other? Make sure you're layering some of these together. It's not going to always work to have all 6 on one page or one communication with potential customers. But there are pieces of each of these that can be used throughout your website, in the App Store, on other places in social media that you're communicating. There are any number of ways to start building up some of these levels of persuasion with people so that when it comes time to make the decision whether they're going to download or buy or sign up, they're much more likely to do it because you've established the rules. You've already established some level of persuasion with them throughout the process. It's really key part of getting people to buy something. Now, again, you can use these rules ethically or you can use them unethically. You can use them for good or for evil. Use them for good. Make sure what you have provides value to the people that you want to use or buy them. Make sure that what you have really delivers on what you're promising and getting people persuaded to do. You've got to deliver on your side of the bargain, but if you can deliver on it and provide value to people, guess what? All of these rules of persuasion that you've used on them, they are now going to communicate to other people. You're going to build a strong project or a strong business because you've utilized the rules of persuasion ethically and provided value to people. Thanks so much. I hope this was valuable to you. I'd love to hear your comments. please do not hesitate to reach out to us on Twitter or reach out to us in YouTube or anywhere else that we are. Our website is blackknux.com. We'd love to speak to you and help you apply the rules of persuasion to your project or business.